Hello, and welcome to today's episode of As a Matter of Fact. I'm joining the conversation today with Brett Rampal, the Director of Nuclear and Power Strategy at Veriten and Chief Technical Analyst at Segra Capital Management. Brett, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. A pleasure.
Absolutely. Looking forward to our conversation. I kind of want to first start and ask you, Brett, what sparked your passion for being involved in the nuclear energy space writ large?
Oh, well, shockingly, like most people, I didn't really grow up exposed to a lot of like nuclear and energy sciences, nuclear engineering. My dad's a doctor, my mother is a nurse, but math and sciences were always a huge part of my household growing up and everything. I used to joke that while all my friends were watching Saturday morning cartoons, we used to be doing math in the mornings until my twin brother would start crying. And so math and science really, really, big part of my education growing up and everything, and the focus of my childhood. And then I went to the University of Florida for my education, and it actually at the time had two top 10 engineering schools in the country, and one was materials engineering, which my older brother was already enrolled in that program, and you needed 8 semesters of chemistry, and the building was slightly further away from the football stadium than the nuclear engineering building was, and the nuclear engineering program was the other top 10 program. So, for odd reasons, I chose it, but then as I started learning about it, I just, fell in, absolute, love is a hyperbolic word that people use in this circumstance, but, really fell to quite embrace the science and the technology.
I kind of wanted to piggyback on that and ask, following your career, you've held a variety of different roles working within the nuclear energy space, from the technical side to policy and advocacy to research, and now kind of from where you sit currently, from a more funding based point of view. With your understanding and career experience, what do you think are some of the factors behind what we're seeing of this renaissance or resurgence of nuclear energy that we're seeing both nationally and internationally?
In recent times and in the trends around sort of like these recent big milestones that we're seeing around nuclear acceptance or nuclear, movement in a positive direction, whether it's California's kind of pullback on the Diablo Canyon shutdown to plan to operate that plant for additional years, or Germany's rollback of a few months to, which, could be longer. We'll see what happens. But right now is a few months to delay the closure of their nuclear power plants due to their energy needs and everything. A lot of those discussions have been mostly driven by reliability and energy security concerns. So I think in a lot of ways, the nuclear discussion and this sort of energy discussion right now is a lot like, come for the climate change, but stay for the reliability and security discussion, even in places like California, where climate change is constantly a part of the discussion, and California is and was a leader on clean energy policy and the climate change discussion. Listening to the hearings and the testimony around the legislation to support the continued operation of Diablo Canyon, the majority of the time I heard climate change mentioned was from testifiers, not from policymakers. And I heard policymakers referencing reliability and security challenges a lot more. I see both aspects together as being intertwined, but this, climate change in a lot of cases being like the way to open the door, and then the reliability and energy security sector discussion being the way the hinges get blown off and the discussion just kind of rushes into the room and everything.
Like I alluded to earlier about your career path writ large, with nuclear energy. From a workforce development point of view, I'm curious to hear your thoughts and your take on, what's some of the shifts and the trends that we've been seeing in the industry.
Well, I think I think that the shifts and the trends in the industry around sort of career opportunities and career paths are sort of growing and changing every day. And I think my career path says a lot about that. I started in a very technically focused role supporting the existing fleet. In a lot of ways, I had very few options when I was coming out of school versus sort of the folks coming out of school now, or the young professionals thinking about making transitions now. And that is a great thing for an individual and a great thing for a community and for an industry that's supposed to be vibrant and growing and expanding. When I started my career and working for those large vendors, I, again, super excited, love my time there, but I couldn't look at opportunities to work for startup advanced reactor developers. Those opportunities just exist now for a young person, entry level. There weren't opportunities to find sort of entry level opportunities in nuclear policy or policy discussions for nuclear energy or nuclear engineering, or young professionals. So I think it says a lot about the broader opportunities for individuals as well as the community. If it wasn't important, or it wasn't useful for nuclear to be in a policy or finance discussion, there wouldn't be jobs there.
Absolutely. And a great perspective, as we're seeing a lot of changes in the workforce. I know we've talked a little bit about the current landscape for nuclear energy and what we're seeing nationally and internationally. What are some of the things you can kind of see coming down the pike, writ large in 2023? Are there any issues or areas that people haven't really focused on or discussed in that area yet?
So I think that, we're going to continue to see lots of interesting discussions around investment, engagement in public markets, perhaps mergers and acquisitions discussions. I think, it's an opportunity for the community to grow, and it's an opportunity for outside investment and public investment to also capitalize. So I think 2023 will hopefully, just be the continuation of that broader growth that we really need in that area to reach those really large deployment numbers that everybody really wants to see for broader energy and climate needs. I think also the recognition and the broader inclusion discussion that we talked about before, that's going to continue. A lot of these tax policies and things from the Inflation Reduction Act that we just saw written into law don't even start until after 2023. So we're going to see discussions about implementation and how all that's done. I would, also would be shocked to see that, those sort of measures don't send signals to, other nations and other, state governments within the United States, as well as other, nations outside of the United States, of policy opportunities and trends and signals that are being made. I think we're going to continue to see, and probably see ramped up discussions around this regulatory discussion here, especially in the United States. Regulatory challenges around the deployment of future nuclear is of course a big a large pole in the tent.
Thank you, Brett. Yes, and I'm happy you talk about the bright shining light that we're witnessing, and the resurgence of nuclear energy broadly, both at the national and the international levels. I think this year we've really seen a lot of progress for nuclear energy across many different things. So I'm really curious to hear your perspective. What is overall kind of most exciting for you as you've been tracking nuclear energy recently?
Well, I think I would put it kind of in like three bins of the things that are most exciting to me. And the first one is just the overall sort of inclusivity discussion and broader recognition, when I was a student, there was a lot more difficulty in being in those sort of clean energy discussions as a nuclear engineering student or as a nuclear energy advocate, or even in my early professional years and everything. And now we're seeing just much more broad and widespread recognition and the opportunity for um you know just sort of high tides raises all boats sort of mentality that is really kind of what nuclear energy advocates, the industry has been hoping for and focused on for many years. The sort of second bin, I think, is the interest from private investment and the engagement with public markets from this growing sort of advanced reactor, existing nuclear discussion, existing nuclear market discussion, all of that. We're seeing a recognition from investors on the private side that there's an opportunity here to invest in fuel cycle opportunities as well as advanced reactors and both fission companies, fusion companies. Those investments are coming from traditional energy investors, traditional energy investors, investors focused on climate opportunities, institutional investment organizations, all sorts of a wide variety of investment groups, adding to like sort of the validation case of what's moving forward in terms of the future of nuclear technology here. And then finally, this third bin, I think, that makes me most excited is kind of that those demonstrations are just over that horizon. We're moving from the making promises sort of time frame to the delivering on promises time frame. And that's exciting. Challenge breeds opportunity, and I think that this community is really thriving a lot on these growing challenges and trying to really hit those opportunities. So looking at Project Pele demonstrations in 2024, the National Reactor Innovation Center potentially having demonstrations by 2025, and then additional small modular and micro reactor demonstrations following in those subsequent years. We're starting to move into those times when the real progress needs to start happening on these projects. So that is very exciting to me. So I think those three bins are really that recognition, inclusivity, the that private capital and public market engagement, and then just that we're really moving into the time of demonstration.
As we head into the new year and we think about the best ways we can continue the momentum and the progress we're seeing for nuclear energy, what do you really see the role of the advocate playing in that conversation?
I think that a lot of the biggest successes and opportunities that advocates have been able to capitalize upon over the last several years have been due to flexibility, being nimble. So, I think that a lot of the best sort of opportunities or best things that we saw happen in recent years happened because we we were really um able to pivot on our back foot at the minute when we needed to, where we were able to think quickly and apply in a current set of recommendations or an old set of recommendations to a current discussion in a whole different set of ways and approaches. And so I think that even as a person like myself who has been involved in advocacy, even to say, I have any idea of what I think the advocacy would look like or should look like is a misstep and a poor approach, because I think if we know what the advocacy looks like, then we're already behind in what this needs to be. And in addition to that flexibility, that was also built on the back of a lot of collaboration. I think for advocates, it needs to be more and more and more about collaboration. So I think, it's less sharp elbows, it's being flexible and nimble. You want to be in the same discussion, this same sort of pool, everybody in this group together. But then there's a lot of, sharp elbows sometimes, and that just doesn't work. So it's very important for us to really be focused on, you know finding those connections to work together. Hydrogen hubs, great example, of this opportunity that's covering, across the board opportunities for energy, where nuclear is considered a, an intrinsic part about it. That inclusion was great, and not something I necessarily saw coming, even working very closely with hydrogen policy advocates in my old job and everything. So flexibility, collaboration, less sharp elbows. I think those are really important things, for all advocates, not just nuclear, but will be really important for nuclear advocates.
Sure, absolutely. Advocacy requires a lot of that collaboration and flexible approach, certainly, to get things done. Completely agree.
Thank you very much. I think this has been a wonderful and super fun conversation. And yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, Brett.